The 60s were abuzz with space fever, and Lost in Space cashed in on that aspect. From its quirky cast to campy style and futuristic take on humanity, the show was truly iconic. But there are many details about this show that, just like the name of the series, have been lost in space and time. From the show's involvement in the space race to the whopping budget of the show, what happened behind the sets of this show will blow your mind. Number 10. The show was meant to be darker. The show's tone was much darker initially. We all know the show as that one humorous space show from the 60s with a few serious moments sprinkled in. But the show was initially intended to be much darker and grittier. The producers of the show intended to capture the reality of what space travel could be like. Characters on the show like Mr. Smith and the robot were written with a much more serious tone and were intended for young adults more than children. Number 9. The pilot alone cost $600,000. You might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't seem too bad, but just hold your spaceships for a second. $600,000 adjusted for inflation gives you a whopping sum of $4.5 million. That's right, $4.5 million to shoot the pilot alone. The first episode, dubbed No Place to Hide, follows the crew aboard the Jupiter 2 and how it crash-lands on a barren planet inhabited by brutal cyclopses. And to think it was all done with zero CGI. Number 8. Dr. Smith was a filler. Dr. Smith was not supposed to be in the show for as long as he was, and was intended to only be there for a few episodes. Then what changed the producer's mind? Well, it was the acting of the amazing Jonathan Harris. Jonathan's portrayal of the backstabbing Dr. Smith made the producers want to extend his role in the show. His acting was amazing to the point he was given full creative control over his character. To just put into perspective how legendary Harris is, he was hired as Chuck Norris's vocal coach. That's right, the man, the myth, the legend himself was a student of Harris. Number 7. Tension among the cast. Now, if you thought the feud between the crew of the Jupiter 2 and the evil Dr. Smith was limited to the show alone, you'd be wrong. There were rumors that this on-screen clash had flowed over to real life between the cast and especially between Guy Williams and Jonathan Harris. As the focus of the show began to shift over from Professor Robinson, who was played by Williams, he felt that he was being cheated out of the main lead. The more screen time Harris got, the more strained the relationship between the two became. But nonetheless, both parties delivered stellar performances despite their odds. Number 6. The robot is the blueprint. The robot is one of the most memorable characters on the show. The mechanical droid that accompanies the crew of the Jupiter 2 acts as both anchor point and comedic relief. The character introduced audiences at the time to dry humor and how contrasting the behaviors of robots would be from that of humans. But there is one thing in particular that robot in Lost in Space is known for. The robot in Lost in Space is the inspiration behind some of the most famous droids of today's day and age. C-3PO and R2-D2 from the Star Wars franchise. C-3PO and R2 are known as pop culture icons for the impact they had on the Star Wars franchise. But little do people know that the character inspiration came from the original robot from Lost in Space. I'm sure you're as surprised as we were when you heard those facts, but the next 5 are even crazier. So before we check them out, make sure to drop a like. Number 5. The man behind the soundtrack. Those who have watched Lost in Space would realize just how amazing the soundtrack is. The opening theme song in particular is so very iconic that you can tell that Lost in Space is playing from the first few notes. But little do people know that it was the legendary John Williams. Although the original pilot episode's theme song used Bernard Herrmann's soundtrack from The Day the Earth Stood Still, Williams is the one who composed the initial theme song that ran for the first 2 seasons and recomposed the theme song for the 3rd season to show the shift from a more dark to a bright and comedic setting. Number 4. The Caped Crusader Next Door. While Lost in Space is certainly one of the most famous TV series of all time, It was the show that was being shot in the neighboring studio that ended up stealing the spotlight of the 60s. It was none other than the Batman. Adam West's Batman was being shot right next door to where Lost in Space was, and the two casts and crews would often run across each other. This often allowed for an exchange of ideas between the two production crews, and they would often remodel and use props from each other's shows. It can't be denied that both shows had a heavy influence on each other and remain as a testament to the 60s ingenuity of storytelling and cinematography. Number 3. Recognized by NASA. NASA is the American government's top authority on all matters related to space and is responsible for putting a man on the moon just 5 years after the pilot aired. NASA truly created history with the Apollo 11 launch in 1969 and definitively won the space race against the Soviets. But what do the real-life government organization NASA and our quirky little space show have in common, you ask? Well, NASA itself has recognized June Lockhart, the actress who played Maureen Robinson. They awarded her the Exceptional Public Achievement Award. She is the only actress in history to win this award, and because of how much she influenced many young children to pick a career in science. Number 2. Committed to quality. If there's one thing you could say about Lost in Space, it's that it still holds up to this day considering its age and the severe limitations they faced compared to today. The cast and crew were dedicated to delivering consistent and high-quality episodes, and the budget was definitely a reflection of that. Lost in Space had the highest budget per episode, coming in with a whopping $130,000 per episode, which is equivalent to over $1 million in today's money. We can see that the production wasn't willing to skimp on quality and expanded the budget as needed. You just don't see the sort of dedication you did with this show in today's media, regardless of how massive the budget is. Number 1. The Lost Animated Show. It's funny when you say it out loud. Nonetheless, it has to be told. Lost in Space has an entire spin-off that is completely lost. The show had gotten the green light for a completely animated show in 1972, but never went into production. The only proof that such an idea even existed is the test footage for the show that was leaked. This has become something of an urban legend with many fans of the show. Many actually theorize that almost a full season was made, but the test footage was the only thing that got leaked. So now efforts are being made by internet sleuths to find the lost footage of what could have been the greatest animated show of the 70s. Bonus fact: bigger than Star Trek. The ship of the crew, the Jupiter 2, actually cost more to make than the Star Trek's Enterprise. This is because the interior of the Jupiter 2 was much more detailed and more functional than the Enterprise. The final figure comes up to nearly $2.6 million by today's standards. From the budgets massive enough to construct a rocket to the recognition from NASA itself, this show has cemented itself as one that will transcend space and time. Which fact shocked you the most? Let us know down in the comments section. Also, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to be notified when a new video gets launched.